we must actually trust our children and tell them the truth. And much about modern parenting suggests doing exactly the opposite, protecting them from all things that are difficult and lying to them when it seems easier or won't hurt them in the moment. And this renders them helpless and hopeless and frankly incompetent, and they grow up into, well, anarchists, actually. So, again, I will butcher this man's name. I apologize. As a Hungarian Boy Scout, Tamás Szalai's father had been linked to a typewriter on which someone composed anti-Soviet propaganda. The year was 1946, and the Red Army occupied Hungary. All the scouts connected to the typewriter suffered punishment: death, exile, or in the case of the elder Szalai, internment without charge in a prison camp. In 1963, less than 20 years later, when Tamás was only 7 years old, he came home from school and told his father how the Soviet army had liberated their nation. He said, "Boy, sit down," Tamás remembers. He began to tell me stories about the 56 uprising and the Soviet invasion. He told me the truth, and when he finished, he warned me never to talk about that at school. Tamás glances down at the floor of his Budapest living room. We have so many problems today because fathers never talk to their sons as my father did to me in 1963. Long before you and I thought that there was something potentially very dangerous on the horizon here, we, without actually ever talking about it in advance, parented our children by speaking to them from the time that they were far too young to understand, but from when they were prelingual, as if they were smart and capable human beings who would come to understand what we were saying to them. We trusted them to be reasonable. We trusted them to be honest and honorable. We taught them to assess rules and to obey good ones and to undermine bad ones. And sometimes we will all make mistakes about which rules are bad and which rules are good, but not simply to trust on the basis that someone told you you needed to do something. This points out why I think that is so important. Not only that our boys, now 14 and 16, are growing into, anti-fragile, strong, compassionate, brilliant young men, but that they actually have the courage of their convictions. And when they don't know something, they know that they don't know it and are willing to say so. And they know from all the way back that we trusted them to be honest and to be courageous.
So if I can just glance at this from a slightly different angle, or maybe it's not, but there is something about a proper familial relationship in which there can be a kind of candor because there is no optionality about the relationship itself.
Yeah.
And so the idea, and if you think about, the Stasi or whatever, and their terrorizing of people by getting them to rat on each other and things, it breaks this fundamental bond. But it is normal and natural for your family members to be the only people who can voice certain things. In an era where certain false ideas are spread as if they are truth, the place where you will hear, actually, that's not right, is at home. And this has been true forever, right?
And not just from parents, from siblings.
From
your cousins, from whoever it is that is in your home with you.
Anybody who doesn't have an option. And this becomes very different when you may not know your cousins, right? When you only gather at certain ceremonial phenomena or whatever it may be. But it is vitally important that you recognize that there's a certain amount of lying that goes on in the world. It's automatic that there would be, for all sorts of different reasons, for business reasons, for reasons of, people trying to get into each other's pants. There's all kinds of lying out there. Where can you depend on people not to do that? Well, you should be able to depend on them not to do it at home.
Yes.
And,
yes.
So for example, the idea that masculinity is toxic and that you shouldn't engage in it, right? Because it's just bad. Right. Well, that could result, if you were a boy and nobody told you the truth about it, that could result in you weakening yourself and emasculating yourself, thinking that might be the only way for you to have
Yeah.
a proper romantic relationship.
Yeah.
And then you're going to find out what? Oh, women don't like weak men. So you've gotten rid of whatever strength you had that might have been attractive. And so in any case, somebody has to sit you down and say, look, I know that that's what people are saying, but it's garbage. And here's why.
Yeah.
And
strength is not violence. Those are two different things.
right.
Women don't want violent men, but they also don't want weak men.
Right. And in fact, strong men don't have to engage in violence very frequently. The point is they have the restraint and the discipline to deal with it. So the point, though, is that going after the nuclear family is necessary in order to disrupt imagine that every household, somebody is saying, actually, that's bullshit. You got to say it outside, but here you don't have to say that because we know better. That would weaken the revolution. So the revolution has to break apart the family or render it suspect or something in order to do what it does.
You go after the family and you go after men, and you've done a lot of the job that you need to do if what you're trying to do is weaken the links between people.
And this also explains why we are seeing such a heavy concentration of this in schools of ed, in schools themselves, and especially schools where we're dealing with very young children, because the complexity of raising children where you tell them the truth at home and then wondering if they're going to say something at school that is going to reveal that your family isn't on board, right, is complexifying, to say the least.
I think it's not from this quote that I'm about to read, but Dreer also reports in the book how in many of the totalitarian regimes, of course, schools are used as replacements for family, and students are taught that when they hear a discrepancy between what they hear at home and what they hear in school, well, they must trust the state, they must trust the school. And in this case, in 21st century weird countries, including the United States, it's not about the state versus the family, but it is about the schools versus the family. And the schools are well captured. They truly are with this ideology. So Maria Komaromi, who is a Catholic teacher in Budapest, says, it's no accident that every dictatorship always tries to break down the family, because it's in the family that you get the strength to be able to fight. You have the feeling that they have your back, so you can go out into the world and face anything. It is just as true today as it was under communism. She said that to Dreer in Modern Times. So I would say that this is exactly right, and it strangely points to, well, it's not strange, it won't be strange to you or me, but it seems to point to a danger in two distinct modern parenting styles that would seem to be at odds, but they're actually two very bad sides of a bad coin, which is that helicopter parenting, which protects children from all risk and insult, and would seem to, then creates the need for safe spaces, and creates young adults who are adult in body only and really have never experienced anything to push back against, to learn how to be in the world, in combination with letting babies cry themselves to sleep and alone and putting them on schedules, right? So that's equally as insane, right? A tiny child who does not yet have relationships in the world, who does not yet know that there is anyone or anything to trust, needs the connection more than anything, so that once that child knows that they have one, hopefully two parents, hopefully more even, but who 100% have their back, who are with them all the time, who will pick them up if they cry, and who are not going to be bullied by them, who are not going to let this child be a terrorist, but who are going to 100% have their back, then very early, you can let that child start to go out and take risks, and and handle knives in the kitchen, and go out on a bike ride at ages that most modern American parents wouldn't imagine letting their children do. But children become capable very, very quickly, but only if they 100% know that there is hopefully two parents, absolutely with love and adoration for them, watching their back, who will step in if they at all can to help them if they get into trouble.
So I think this is a brilliant and really important connection. I had not understood this before, but so it's not even know that their parents will. It's below knowing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Attachment, which is formed
Yes.
so early,
Mhm.
is the basically wired in sense of security that actually allows you to be bold and face danger because you know that you can always go back to the thing that remains true and that raised you.
Yes.
So breaking attachment with the, rather insane and counter-evolutionary belief that somehow you must not be too responsive to your infant, lest you give them the expectation that they're going to be taken care
You
of.
wouldn't want to coddle the baby.
Right. That nutty belief structure, which was so prevalent in the 60s and 70s, is clearly connected in some way. You've got people who are alien to their own families, right? Which makes them more susceptible to the message that's coming from outside that they are entitled to certain things. And what is it they're being told that they're entitled to? They're being told that they are entitled to be comfortable and feel safe at all times, which is not life. No. Right? The ability to be durable and to know how, to not be paralyzed by a sense of discomfort or a momentary lack of safety is essential to being a functional adult. And so basically the idea is we've hobbled these kids, we've broken their sense of where they might be safe. We've then externally allowed them to be told that they're entitled to be safe at all times, and the fact that they are constantly feeling jeopardized is somebody else's responsibility, and that they are in a position to demand redress now. It's
it's failures all the way down.
Yeah. It is. And, I have to imagine that most of these things came together in one ugly, disastrous package by accident. But now that it's here, wow, you can see it.